Well, hello there. So, I don't know when you guys are going to be watching this video, but it's been a while since I made one of these, and this is I'm recording this after a very long, terrible pneumonia experience. I couldn't do one of these. I couldn't do all this talking stuff. Anyway, that out of the way, I discovered this article in Writer's Digest. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to look at Writer's Digest and see if they have any interesting articles. And I found this one. Why do writers write about the end of the world? And it's by author Dorian Lynskey. And so I thought, who is this Dorian Lynskey guy? I've never heard of him. So I found his website, which is very hard to read if you look at the screen now. The way these words, I don't know, there's something about this that's really hard to read for me. It's just a lot of stuff. Anyway, he seems to be a nonfiction writer, sort of opinion writer, he's done journalism for The Guardian, The Observer, BBC. I don't know where he's from. Where is he from? I have no idea. Possibly he's from the UK. I am not sure. Anyway, so he's won some awards. So he seems to be a pretty good nonfiction opinion journalist type of writer. So I'm expecting this article to be pretty good, unless Writer's Digest did him dirty. But I have high hopes. Okay. I hope it will be interesting too. So, why do writers write about the end of the world? Author Dorian Lynskey explores why writers have long imagined and written about the end of the world and why readers come along for the ride. This was written January 27, 2025, and at the time of recording this, it is January 29, so it hasn't been that very long. This is a freshly baked article for me right now, reading this. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll just to see how long it is and everything. So we're just going to look at it a little bit. Okay, there's an introduction bit. Okay, so it's a short little thing. So I might not be able to give timestamps for this, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe I'll do this bit introductory section here in the beginning. And then there's a section after the picture. And then there's another section after that picture. So maybe we'll do it like that. Okay. So, introduction. Visions of the end of the world are now so entrenched in popular culture, in cinema, television, and video games as well as novels, that it is strange to think that there was a time when the decision to tell such a story was considered absurd and obscene. That was the experience of Mary Shelley, the creator of Frankenstein, when she published The Last Man in 1826. Damn, 1826! I mean, I don't really think about these sort of classic literature and when they were published until faced with the fact. 1826. Oh, well, that was a long time ago, huh? So there was a time when it was absurd. I don't know why I did a weird gasp there. I didn't mean to. Absurd and obscene. That's interesting. So people didn't want to even write about the end of the world, or maybe there was some controversy. I don't know. But, yeah, that is interesting to think that long ago, people were like, ooh, writing about the end of the world? You're writing about the end of the world? Why would you do such a thing? And now it's like, why aren't you writing about the end of the world? I don't know. But, times change. I guess that's the thing. I don't know a lot about, Mary Shelley and Frankenstein. I know the story of Frankenstein, but I don't really know the actual details of the story. Like, I've never read it, actually. I haven't read a lot of classic literature. But anyway. So that was that. Let's continue on. We could include this part in the first part, the first introduction part. Okay. I don't know why they have a link to 4 elements to write a dystopian fantasy in here, but maybe it's somehow related to Mary Shelley. I don't know. The first ever secular novel about the death of the human race was fundamentally an expression of grief. Shelley used the story of a lethal pandemic to dramatize the lives and deaths of her husband Percy, 2 of her children, and her friend Lord Byron, all in a space of 60 years. But the novel was immediately drowned by a torrent of contemptuous and often misogynistic reviews which questioned why she had written it at all. Interesting. He has a quote of himself. It says, whether the human race is facing an asteroid, a pandemic, a nuclear war, homicidal AI, or an army of zombies, these stories ask us to think about what we have, what we could lose, and how we might feel about that. So, fundamentally an expression of grief. I kind of wonder what exactly, I mean, he's describing that the novel was drowned by a torrent of contemptuous and often misogynistic reviews. I can kind of guess what those might have been like, because she is a woman. Why is a woman writing at all? Why is a woman writing about this stuff? You know, that could have been the sense back then, 1826. I mean, back then. People used to think like that. But I wonder what the actual reviews were like. Does he give an example of actual reviews? Okay, we have some here. That's good. That's good. He answered my question. Okay, let's read. You know what? I'm not going to separate this into timestamps. You're just going to have to come along for the ride. It's impossible with this type of article when it doesn't have sections. The utmost efforts of thought are absolutely childish, declared the monthly review, when they seek to fathom the abyss of ruin, to number the accumulation of disasters, to paint the dreadful confusion which await that final scene. It accused Shelley of possessing a diseased imagination and a most polluted taste. Good grief! Monthly review, you're just ripping her apart. Some of these, I've read some book reviews that are just, book and movie reviews that are just, they're just, it's a whole other review culture. Review culture, is that a thing? It's like reviews are its own world of literature because they're so creatively brutal. Good heavens. Diseased imagination. Polluted taste. Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm laughing because it's just, oh my gosh, like ridiculous and crazy and absurd and weird and geez. I mean, think about it for a moment. Like, what if someone told you you have a diseased imagination? Oh my gosh. I feel like, I mean, I might even be like, great, have some more. Good grief. Okay. For the next few decades, the field of speculative fiction was barren in the UK. Okay, so he is from the UK. I mean, if he's talking about the UK, he's probably from the UK. I guessed it right, I think. Edgar Allan Poe, whose The conversation of Eros and Charmian, probably not saying that right, 1839, was the first work of fiction to depict the shattering of the planet, with a similarly morbid outlier in the U.S. Was a similar... Okay, wait, hold on. I read that wrong. Edgar Allan Poe, whose The Conversation of Eros and Charmian was the first work of fiction to depict the shattering of the planet, was a similarly morbid... Edgar Allan Poe was a similar... I don't like these sort of sentences who have that structured like this, because I forgot, because this middle part is so long that I forgot what this was connecting to. Edgar Allan Poe was a similarly morbid outlier in the U.S. Okay. Towards the end of the 19th century, however, oh my gosh, what is this? Fin de Seiko. I don't know what this is. I don't know what this is. I don't know what this is. What is this? Anxieties. However, something around anxieties sparked a tremendous appetite for tales of futurity, including the apocalyptic. Laying waste to great cities and nations became normalized and has never gone away since. That's interesting that there was that sudden change. It probably has something to do with whatever was going on in society at that time. Maybe people were being faced with some devastating things, and so by depicting that, it helped them deal with it. I mean, I'm just speculating here, okay? I don't remember my history so well, but if there were any wars going around, any like depression, like financial depression, economy depression type of stuff going around, or there was some kind of big pandemic situation going around or something like that. But if it was towards the end of the 19th century, wouldn't that be like the Civil War, I think? Wasn't that towards the end? I mean, not exactly the end, but I know that at least in the US, the Industrial Revolution was going on. I think there were other things, a lot of other things going on. Big changes going on. Maybe people were uncertain and but when he says anxieties sparked tremendous appetite for tales of futurity, I feel like if it was towards the end of the 19th century, wasn't that the Industrial Revolution? So then their appetite for tales of futurity kind of makes sense because there's a lot of change going on in the country. I mean, this is all my speculation. And the reason I know so much about I don't know so much about it. I don't know a lot about it, the Industrial Revolution. But I do know a little bit about it because I'm writing a story that leads up to the Industrial Revolution. Anyway, so for some reason, laying waste to great cities and nations became normalized and has never gone away since. So never gone away since. I do really, really feel like, though, I mean, whatever we write, whatever we produce, like artwork, any creative endeavor, like artwork, writing, music, what else is there? Writing, music, art. Is there something else? Culture? Fashion? I don't know. Anything creative, any creative endeavor is often seems to be affected by whatever is going on in society. Like there are these cartoons that are I've watched some old like Bugs Bunny cartoons or Elmer Fudd cartoons that I didn't realize the versions that I was watching was the versions that were fixed and that the racism was taken out of it. I didn't realize that some scenes or some parts of the cartoon was actually cut out. They did it in such a way that it wasn't like, what happened just now? That is weird. There were some that were like that, but so I went to find the originals. Oh my gosh. At that time, the propaganda and everything in cartoons. So I think in literature, it's the same thing, isn't it? I mean, there's like, it would reflect the time, wouldn't it? So maybe them wanting to lay waste to great cities is like some way of wanting change. I don't know. I'm just really speculating here and guessing and drinking a drink and doing this. You guys are just listening, but you keep hydrated as well. Human beings are mostly made out of water, so you need to like replenish that. We're essentially walking water balloons, so you better replenish your water from time to time so that you don't get too dehydrated. Sometimes, actually in the summer I've heard, this is something that I've heard, okay, tangent time, yay, tangent time. So the summer is when people usually recognize that they are thirsty because it's hot or it's dry and you feel thirsty, actually feel thirsty. But in the winter, it's not hot, or in the colder seasons when it's, because I'm thinking about people on the other side of the equator, because when winter time for you might not be actual winter time. In the colder months when it's dry and everything, you might not feel thirsty because it's just dry, but you're not actually, like, your throat doesn't feel thirsty and you're not hot, so you don't feel thirst as much as you do in the summer. So you can actually get more easily dehydrated in the wintertime. So you really have to make a point to drink your water, at least have some kind of water or drink, something that's not caffeine. So if you're drinking caffeine, because that makes you go to the bathroom, right? So you need to keep some water near you. Yeah, so anyway, that's a little thing. How did we get there? I have no idea. The maestro of the form was H.G. Wells. Oh, wait, I know this very well, because I read it. The Time Machine, who began his career by imagining the Earth's final days in the time machine. Oh, he began his career. Oh, I see. Interesting. 1895. Sorry, I'll read. Anyway, never mind. Anyway, I keep interrupting myself and then interrupting my thoughts, and now I don't know where I was going with this. The maestro of the form was H.G. Wells, who began his career by imagining the Earth's final days in The Time Machine, 1895, and went on to explore so many varieties of doom that one magazine called him a past master of the debacle, an expert in Armageddons. Interesting. His most successful effort, artistically and commercially, was The War of the Worlds, 1898. The world doesn't actually end, but England takes quite a battering from the Martian invaders, and Wells introduced or polished several apocalyptic tropes, from vivid scenes of destruction to ruminations on survival and loss. I actually have The War of the Worlds. I mean, not like as a physical book, but as a free digital copy on iBooks or something like that. I know I have it because I thought, I should read the classics. I did read The Time Machine, and that actually inspired me. What did it inspire me to do? It inspired me to write something. I did actually write something inspired by The Time Machine after I read it. It's been years, though, since I read it. Oh, The War of the Worlds. I do have it, but I haven't read it. So I'm not entirely familiar with it. So, okay, the world doesn't actually end, but England takes a battering. H.G. Wells, past master of the debacle, an expert in Armageddons. I like that. Sometimes these sort of review, like book review people, they are able to come up with such a short phrase, but it's a short phrase that nicely summarizes a person or a book. And it's very short, but it's like packed full with meaning and in humor or whatever. And it's so clever. I write little book reviews on Instagram, but mine is nothing like that. Nothing like what the professionals write. And sometimes, the professionals, when you read something the professional book reviewer wrote, you really feel like, oh, that sounds so cool. I want to read that book. Or that sounds so horrifying. I'm so interested and intrigued and I want to read the book. I don't know what people think when they read mine, but I try my best. I admire the professional book reviewer people. They have a way with words. I mean, like, they know their words. It's a whole other, as I said before, it's a whole other world of literature, these book reviews. This is a really hard title for me to say correctly. The War of the Worlds. I have to slow it down, otherwise I'm gonna say the word of the words, okay? Does that happen with you with W words? Sometimes W words just somehow get to me. The War of the Worlds is a useful answer to the question of why writers and readers are so inexhaustibly fascinated by the end of the world, because there is no single answer. Okay, where are we going with this? Wells pursues his scientific curiosity about the possibility of life on Mars and the newly discovered microscopic realm of bacteria. He satirizes imperialism and genocide during turning the British from colonizers to colonized. He explores extreme reactions to crises. The sinister artilleryman who believes in molding a stronger, purer race underground foreshadows both fascism and survivalism. He prods at the fragility of civilization and mocks its hubris. He takes seriously trauma and grief, and he enjoys knocking things down, admitting that he had fun writing about killing my neighbors in painful and eccentric ways. Oh my gosh. Okay, there's a lot of stuff here. Okay, half the words I'm not completely 100% sure if I know what they mean. Where do we begin? Where do we even begin breaking this down? Do we even want to break it down? Does it need to be broken down? Because I haven't read the world of the... Because I haven't read this book, I don't really actually know, like, I can't be like, oh yeah, I agree with that. I agree, and I see what you're saying. To me, as someone who hasn't read the book, I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting, so that stuff is appearing? Is that your interpretation, Dorian Lynskey? Is that your interpretation, Dorian Lynskey, or is this something that most people who have read the War of the Worlds would agree on? Oh yeah, I saw that in the book, or I felt that, or I interpreted it in that way. So I don't know, so I can only say, well, that's interesting. So it's a useful answer to the question of why writers and readers are fascinated, because there is no single answer. So what? Wait, hold on a moment. So the world, the wa of the wa. I really have trouble with this title. The wa of the words is a useful answer to the question because there is no single answer. What? You mean to say, okay, hold on. I'm trying to understand. You mean to say that there is a lot of stuff in this book which answers the question of why writers and readers are so fascinated by World's End. Is that it? So breaking down that book gives us the answers that we're looking for. Is that what he's saying? I think that's what he's saying. What do you think? Is that what he's saying? So where it says he pursues scientific curiosity about the possibility of life on Mars, this could be something like, if you take it more generally and not in the context of W of W, there is the scientific curiosity about the possibility of life on some planet somewhere. Colonization. So how is what satirizes the satire, making a satire out of things like imperialism and genocide and colonizing some big things, historical things that may often be quite terrible for a lot of people. To put that in a satirical context makes it easier to swallow. On top of it being fictional, makes it easier to swallow. And extreme reactions to crises. So what are the extreme measures people will take if they want to survive? And the fascination of those extremes. Maybe having a fascination of those extremes. And if those extremes are happening, if those extremes will eventually lead to extreme reactions to crises. Those extreme reactions in order to survive. So if you want an extreme reaction, you need an extreme situation, which would be the end of the world. I mean, how more extreme do you want to get, right? So maybe people are fascinated by the end of the world because they are fascinated by how people may react to those extremes in an extreme way. I'm trying to come up with the answers from what he says is that there are answers here in the world, or the wa of the wa. So, trying to do that. But you still take You poke at the fragilities of civilization, the fragility of civilization. So, this is the end of the world. Some people react in extreme ways. Oh my gosh, look at that. Some people are acting in extreme ways. On top of, oh my gosh, civilization. This civilization is so fragile. But still, it says he takes seriously trauma and grief. So despite poking fun at and prodding fragility and mocking, despite that he's making a satire out of terrible things, making people act in extreme ways to crisis for survival, despite he's poking and prodding at the fragility of civilization and mocking its hubris, he still takes trauma and grief seriously. That's interesting, because trauma and grief, that's a really human emotion part. So despite all these action things like reactions and imperialism and colonization, action things, to make people feel like they are connected to the story and to the characters, he uses emotion. Is that, I'm narrowing my eyes. Is that how we're supposed to interpret this passage? This section here? He enjoys knocking things down. I mean, as a writer, you gotta enjoy knocking things down sometimes. So that's interesting. I mean, I'm saying it again, but it's interesting, seriously, trauma and grief, because those are really human emotions. People can relate to those types of things, and even if they've never felt terrible trauma or terrible grief or any type of trauma and grief, they might still get an understanding of the people, understanding of their emotions. And it's important maybe to have that in there. If all this like crisis stuff and like terrible things are happening in this fictional world, the world is going to end, you need a bit of humanity stuffed in there so that people will really be engaged and invested in the story. I don't know if I'm getting anywhere or if I'm just talking in circles. Those are the cons of me talking in circles. Is a con of not scripting any of these videos, but I'm trying to give you my first reaction to this, and not my like fifth reaction to it, which would be, I don't know, polished or something. You can see these competing instincts at play throughout apocalyptic fiction: the howl of indignation, the sardonic cackle, the sorrowful elegy, the chilling deadpan, the call to arms. Take the very different catastrophe novels produced in Britain during the 1950s and 1960s by John Wyndham, John Christopher, and J.G. Ballard. I was expecting it to be John again. In bestsellers such as The Day of the Triffids, 1951, Wyndham, it's probably like Wyndham or something, isn't it? Wyndham was ultimately hopeful that humanity could preserve civilized values under pressure. Christopher, who considered Wyndham too sentimental, argued instead that the fight to survive would turn ordinary people into ruthless monsters. And Ballard tossed aside the desire to preserve or rebuild society, presenting earth-shaking disasters as an opportunity for radical transformation. Ballard described the Cataclysm novel as a rebellion against the huge, reductive machine we call reality. Interesting that Dorian Lynskey puts these three writers side by side like this, so we can really see the slight difference between them. Their take on catastrophe. Wyndham is optimistic. Christopher is very negative. I mean, he's like, people are going to turn to monsters. Ballard is like, here is this big, terrible, terrible earthquake that practically flattens the nation. But that's a good thing, because now we can rebuild the nation. We can start from scratch. Definitely seen, I feel like I've seen, like, I'm thinking about movies, because I haven't really read a lot of books like this. I mean, The Time Machine wasn't particularly, I mean, little bit like a Christopher and Wyndham together. I don't know. I don't know anything. I'm just a little fantasy writer over here. So, earth-shaking disasters, an opportunity for radical transformation. I mean, I guess if an earth-shaking disaster happened, it might create some radical transformation, but it also might not. People just might want the stuff that they had, the same stuff that they had before that wasn't really working, but it's their comfort, so they still want it. So, I don't know. There are even more extreme contrasts. Anna Kavan's Ice, 1967, dismantles the human race with unflinching determination and obvious relish, where Emily St. John Mandel's pandemic novel, Station 11, 2014, mourns every loss and sharpens the reader's appreciation for the everyday miracles that we all take for granted. Some authors, like Wells, end up arguing with themselves. Kurt Vonnegut's numerous apocalyptic scenarios added up to a decades-long tragicomic struggle between empathy and misanthropy. I've heard of Station 11, and I've been like, a little bit interested in it. It's a pandemic. When I saw a pandemic novel, I thought, oh, it was written during the pandemic, but no. It just has a pandemic in it. I didn't know that's what it was about. Dismantles the human race with unflinching determination and obvious relish. I like that. I like that bit a lot. I would like to read a book that dismantles the human race with unflinching determination and obvious relish. It's like when people are fascinated by dark, sinister things. I mean, the end of the world is pretty dark and sinister. But it's the same thing. Like people who like horror, like I like horror movies. But it's not like I want to be in a horror movie situation at all. I don't want to be. Some people might, I don't know. But it's like, it's not morbid fascination, but it's a fascination of the dark and sinister and evil things. It's like, because it's so, I mean, it's not really like it's hush hush or anything, but I feel like it's like kind of not out in the open. And because it's not out in the open very much, or not a lot of people really talk about it, you're even more fascinated by it. That's probably called something in psychology, right? So, have you any of you, I don't know why my sentence came out like that. Have any of you read Station 11? Was it good? Is it worth time and money? Let me know in the comments down below. Okay, so we're almost towards the end here. These are the last two paragraphs. Hang in there. The most heralded apocalyptic tiki novel. Oh my gosh, I am not speaking today. The most heralded apocalyptic novel of recent decades is probably Cormac McCarthy's Pulitzer-winning The Road, which pares the theme down to its base ingredients of love and death. An unnamed father and son trek slowly through the cold, charred husk of America after an unspecified catastrophe has wiped out most plant and animal life as well as people, leaving behind mostly men who would eat your children in front of your eyes. With no hope on the horizon beyond living to see another day and no scope for heroism, McCarthy asks why anyone would want to survive in such a world. The father admits that without the duty to protect his son, he would give up. Every spark of compassion or decency constitutes a remarkable victory over a situation that seems destined to snuff them out. It is the colossal, crushing bleakness of the novel that makes it so moving. It's very interesting how that we are so fascinated or moved by such deeply depressing negative things. Feel like, but why do we also, I was gonna say, why don't we feel that way for happy things, but do we feel that way for happy things? Like, is it like, I mean, yeah, happy endings can move people, but it can move people. But are we fascinated with the happy stuff as much as we are fascinated about the dark and bleak stuff? Because I feel like if there was a book about happy things, and we knew it was going to be happy, and there was a book about dark and bleak things, maybe, I don't know, because I have not done any experiments with anyone, maybe people would choose the dark one more than the happy one. Like, oh, I mean, happy stuff, you can find it in the daily life, and it's not, there's no like extreme for the happiness, for the happy side, for the positive sides, for the good sides. The extreme lies in the negative sides. So, anyway, my mind just completely blanked out for a second there. I feel like I might have just disappeared into a void and come back. I feel so sleepy today. Hope you guys are awake. I should probably get coffee. I actually don't have coffee. I have chai tea latte, but the thing is, it's not real. Is it real chai? Is there actually chai in here? There's actually 40%. So that's pretty good, but it's not real chai. At least people who drink real chai would say it's not real chai. Chai doesn't have caffeine, I don't think. That's why I'm so sleepy. It says to shake well before drinking. I did not do that. Can you hear that? shaking it now. So we're halfway done, but I don't know, might help something. I don't know. So the positive stuff. So if you give someone a positive happy book, like, I don't know, Disney book or something, and you give someone The Road, and you say, this is dark and depressing, and this is definitely going to be a happy ending, which are you going to choose? People might choose the dark and depressing one. Because I was going to say the extremes of happiness, like an extremely happy story, happy ending, is only so much that you can do. But for devastation, it's like you can go down to the abyss, and then you can go even further down the abyss. I mean, and you can explore even further if you wanted to, and there seems to be no limit to devastation. So maybe that's why we are so fascinated with apocalypse and end of the world and zombie attacks, disease spreading and wiping out an entire nation or entire world. I don't know about those disease spreading ones anymore now. I mean, since the pandemic happened, I'm not sure what I feel about those stories. I mean, they're only stories, but now then we can experience the real one, and then it's like, oh my gosh, that's actually stuff that actually happens, and I don't know what I feel about it now. But yeah. Anyway, do you think if someone presented you, or you presented someone a really, really happy book, like a Disney, it's just rainbows, like a unicorn vomited rainbows into the pages, that's how happy it is, and then a book that is just dark and depressing, which one would you choose? Which one do you think people would choose? And for what reasons, you think? Because if people would choose the dark and depressing, then I'm speculating that it's because we don't know what the limit, what the extreme, how extreme that it can be. So we're both curious and fascinated about that side, more so than the happy side, because the happy side is very predictable. That's what I think, anyway. These are all books with moral seriousness and literary merit, but when the subject is the end of everything, even the shallowest example of genre fiction reveals something profound about the author's assessment of humanity and society. Whether the human race is facing an asteroid, a pandemic, nuclear war, homicidal AI, I see. That's this quote up here. That's this quote up here. So we are reading the quote from the picture quote. Okay. Whether the human race is facing an asteroid, a pandemic, nuclear war, homicidal AI, or an army of zombies, these stories ask us to think about what we have, what we could lose, and how we might feel about that. Mary Shelley realized before her critics did that stories about the end of the world are stories about us. Uh-oh, typo. Right here. End of the world are stories about us. And then he is talking about his book here at the end. Okay. Moral seriousness. Yeah, so I think this moral seriousness has to do with when he was talking about when Dorian, what was his last name again? Lynskey. When Dorian Lynskey was talking about H.G. Wells taking seriously trauma and grief. So he takes trauma and grief seriously, and these books have moral seriousness. Even though they might be mocking terrible things or exaggerating disasters and reactions that people have to these disasters, at the core of these books is some kind of moral seriousness, some kind of talking about some deep human emotion or something, and that is what helps us connect to the book more. So he even says here, even the shallowest example of genre fiction reveals something profound about the author's assessment of humanity and society. So that's why I was saying, it goes back to what I was saying earlier in the beginning of the article about the how society, what's going on in our society at the time, can affect whatever we are writing or creating. Any creative endeavor really is affected by what is going on in our society at the moment. So I say anything, but not everything, not like every single piece of fiction created in the year 2025 is going to be reflecting the year 2025. But some things will be. Some things will be doing that. Yeah, and it will be the author's assessment of what is going on. Because who was writing it? The author is writing it, of course. Of course, duh. So, it will reveal something profound about what the author thinks about the humanity and the society at that time of writing the book. These stories ask us to think about what we have, what we could lose, and how we might feel about that. I think he's trying to say, and if he is saying this, I do agree with him, that these stories, the really dark and depressing stories, and how people deal with those times, and how they struggle, and stuff like that, their reactions to the crises and stuff like that, helps us explore how we might feel about those situations. So it's quite interesting to think about, especially if we looked at something like The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. People at that time, how did they feel about it, might be reflected in H.G. Wells' story, which is an interesting sneak peek into the society, how people thought at the time. So I just thought, I did a weird pause there because I just thought that I heard my phone buzzing with a phone call, but then I look and my phone is right next to me and it's not saying anything. So I don't know, I'm imagining stuff now. I probably should take a nap or something. Anyway, that was kind of a chaotic, all kinds of, I didn't really critique this article because I did feel a lot of it well written. I was like, are there any reviews? Like right here, I'm selecting right here. He's talking about, oh, there's some reviews of which question why she had written it at all. And I'm like, oh, give me some examples of reviews. And then he did. The monthly review. It's just one example, but it's a very good example that shows how people were reacting to her stories at that time. You see, people react in different ways. The society will react in different ways back then and today. Like, maybe today we're like, oh yeah, it's just another one of those darker stories, just one of those apocalypse, world end stories. But back then it was like, what are you talking about? That is absurd. That is diseased imagination, quote, quote, or the quote, quote, most polluted taste. So, diseased imagination and most polluted taste. It's just, wow. These creative, rude comments. Anyway. So that's the end of this article. I am going to go take a nap. Apparently I need it. Half losing my train of thought during this article, getting a little bit confused, but I hope you were able to follow me. And maybe if of course, if you want to read this article for yourself, all the way through, I'm going to leave the link in the description as always, so you can go look at it and give me your thoughts. If you have any idea of why writers write about the end of the world, why are we so fascinated about it? Maybe it's a little bit of morbid curiosity or morbid fascination. Maybe. Or it's some kind of it was some kind of fascination. So anyway, yeah, let me know all the stuff in the comments, your thoughts, any opinions that you have about this. Yeah, so it was a very well written article. That's why I didn't do a lot of critiquing. I mean, obviously, if an article was well written, it's not going to need any critiques, particularly. Maybe there are some things to critique about this, like maybe it could be separated into sections, but this isn't a little opinion piece. So, interesting find, interesting piece, interesting video. It's been a while since I've done one of these anyway. That's it. It's the end of the video. This is the end of the video. Not the end of the world, the end of the video. I already said let me know about the stuff you thought in the comments. And what else do I say at the end? Stuff in the comments. Oh, I should do the secret word at the end. The secret word. The secret word of this video is machine, from Time Machine, from H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. It's going to be machine, completely unrelated to writing and literature. So, if people see the word machine in the comments, they're going to be so confused. Like, why are we talking about machines in the comments? But, so, the secret word for making it to the end of the video is machine. And please keep hydrated. Please keep hydrated, even when it's cold, even when you don't feel as thirsty. You should keep hydrated. What else do I say at the end of videos? Keep hydrated. Let me think. Oh, I say, hope you have a lovely rest of the day. You will hear me in the next video. The fox is out.